Jamestown was the first permanent English settlement in the New World. It was founded in Virginia in 1607. The settlers there faced many difficult times from the start. They nearly starved to death, and quite a few actually died. People did not think the colony would last. That was until the growing of tobacco began making big profits. That's when things began to change. The king helped organize the London Company. He wanted to have more people working in the colonies. So the London Company came up with an idea to attract more settlers. They called it the headright system. They would give land to anyone who could pay for their passage to the New World. They thought this was a great way to get more people growing tobacco and other cash crops that could be sent back and sold in the home country. As more settlers came over to claim their land, they came into conflict with the Native Americans. But this did not stop them. These settlers began to build large plantations and even paid for their own workers to come over. At first, they hoped to use indentured servants, but not nearly enough people signed up. By the end of the 1600s, they found a new labor source: African slaves. The London Company set up a government in the colonies. They called it the House of Burgesses. This gave settlers a voice in their life in the colonies. As Jamestown became more and more successful, it grew into the colony of Virginia. It became the model for what a colony looked like in the South. Most of the New England colonies were started by religious groups who did not feel they could practice their religion freely back in England. The Pilgrims landed at Plymouth in 1620. They signed the Mayflower Compact upon their arrival. They believed they now had the right to set up their own government. Just like settlers in Jamestown, the Pilgrims had a hard time surviving at first. Native Americans helped them learn to plant things like corn, and they were able to keep their colony going. Other groups like the Puritans showed up in the New England area in the years to come. They also set up their own governments. They established schools so their children could learn to read and write and understand the Bible. People who did not agree with the ways of the colony were called dissenters. These people were often kicked out of the colonies and forced to find somewhere else in the area to live. Puritan families were often large, so their populations grew quickly. The Pilgrims, the Puritans, and other religious groups had quickly taken over most of New England. There were lots of different kinds of people who settled in the middle colonies, and they were often from different parts of Europe. There were the Dutch who settled in New York. There were Swedes who first came to Delaware. There were even the English Quakers who lived in Pennsylvania. The Quakers were a religious group, but they believed in the idea of freedom of religion. They got along pretty well with the natives. Their colony appealed to many different kinds of people. The middle colonies were the most diverse colonies in the New World. William Penn had been given land from the King of England that he used to set up his colony. It had a government run by the people. Also, the colony's access to water and fertile fields actually made it very profitable too. South Carolina was founded as a proprietary colony. King Charles II gave land to 8 lords proprietors. He did this as a way of repaying these men. He had done the same thing in Pennsylvania. There, William Penn had been the only lord proprietor, but in South Carolina, there were 8. These men hoped to make money by making new settlers pay taxes on their land. These taxes were called quitrents. The proprietors asked John Locke to write a constitution for them. They called it the Fundamental Constitutions of Carolina. It explained how life in this colony would work. It promised freedom of religion and also included some things that would hopefully bring in more settlers. It also planned to set up social classes and give special titles to people who owned the most land. This part never happened, but it showed that the Carolina colony had intended to be a society that gave special privileges to its most wealthy citizens. This was very different than in New England and the middle colonies, where religions said that everyone was equally important. The proprietors wanted to bring more settlers into Carolina, so they started giving away pieces of land. They used the headright system. Virginia had done this too. South Carolina ended up with many large plantations of cash crops. The first people to come to Carolina were English. They had come from the British colony of Barbados. This was a small island in the Caribbean Sea. These people brought the idea of slavery with them. Slavery would make plantation owners very rich. People came from other parts of Europe too. They brought many different religions to the colony. South Carolina had resources, land, a good climate, and great access to water. All of these things helped make money for the colony. The colony was run by a governor. There was also a grand council too. It had representatives of the Lords Proprietors, rich citizens, and a small group of common people. Just like other parts of the New World, Carolina was a democracy from the start too.